Oh yes, here we are, part 4.
Oh wow, yeah. My God, we've really speeded through after like waiting for 10 years.
Yeah, well, you know, when you want to roll, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, the best thing about a lot of these films is most of them I didn't have to rewatch. I'm sure you're the same, right?
Yes. Now, sadly, the same won't be said for Prometheus, but
no. I mean, you actually haven't seen it in like since it was out, right?
Yeah, because I couldn't bring myself to do it again.
Wow,
but now I've got a reason.
That's going to be an experience because I mean I've said it in previous videos, but I keep going back to it. You know, it is one of those films that I rewatch at least once a year out of just fascination, just out of curiosity. You know, and it's one of those things where the cinematography is very good. It gets better to look at, but the script gets dumber the more you watch it. You know.
Yeah, this one, on the other hand, I mean, I've got this film particularly burned into my brain, because in case anyone was wondering, we're doing our deep dive discussion on Alien Resurrection, which came
Alien
out,
Resurrection, which
97?
nobody calls 97 exactly. Nobody calls Alien 4.
No,
nobody calls it Alien 4.
Well, it's interesting because this was the film that nobody asked for.
Yeah, I was thinking about this exact thing earlier on. This is the film where it just becomes a franchise, right?
Well, sort of. I kind of hold the film in very, very high regard for a number of reasons. One, the choice of director was an out there choice for a start.
Well, I mean, it's an odd story actually with the directors because they went through like a whole host of directors for this. They asked loads of people to do it. They asked Peter Jackson to do it at one point. Of course, at this point, 1997, he would have at least begun preliminary work on making Lord of the Rings. So obviously, he couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They asked Danny Boyle to do it.
Maybe. I mean, Sunshine was a great film.
That's exactly it. I'm looking at his work on Sunshine, which is one of the great underrated science fiction horror films, right?
Yeah.
And he's got chops for science fiction. He could have done a really good job with this. It would have been a very different film. I mean, his whole milieu is grim, isn't it? It's dark.
Yeah,
it's this
I think he would have gone back. Yeah, he'd have gone back more to like the isolationist sort of element, or borrowed heavily for the first one. I think in that sense, the coldness of space sort of thing.
Yeah, Bryan Singer was asked.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I know, right? Great director, awful person, like really awful.
Yeah. Well, just be thankful they never asked fucking who's that one who pisses me off?
That's a long list.
Yeah, I know. He had one good film in him, Zack Snyder.
Oh God Almighty!
He had one fucking film in him, and that was his first film, the remake of Dawn of the Dead. Apart from that, everything else he's done has been.
Yeah, actually, the remake of the Dawn of the Dead is really good. It's a really good film.
Yeah,
but everything else is shite. Yeah,
everything else is shite. So Jean-Pierre Jeunet.
Yeah.
Yes, why not?
Very strange choice, right? Very unusual choice.
He's a bit like I kind of feel of him like a bit of Mike Flanagan in the sense that when he gets a group of people that he works really well with, he'll just go, right, come on to my next project.
Yeah.
Because he's got Dominic Pignon.
Yes, he's got a coterie of favourite actors, doesn't he?
Yeah. Ron Perlman, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're right in the sense that it becomes like a franchise. But for me, at the same time, this film sort of feels like because it starts leaning more into the sort of what Chucky did, like sort of leans more into the parody of the situation. I think this film to a certain degree.
Yeah, it's almost a good film in that regard. It's tonally weird.
It sits within the established canon of the universe, but also kind of feels to me like a sort of a what if film.
Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Actually, it doesn't feel like part of if there is such a thing as a core canon here. It doesn't feel like part of it, does it? It feels like an alternative universe. It feels like a big comic book strip, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now
it feels like a sort of 2000 AD style comic book strip. You know how 2000 AD always has that that patina of grimness and darkness, but there's always humor underneath.
Yeah, that underleavened. Yeah, I mean, I like the art direction of the film. I think that it's sort of funny because there are certain things that work and certain things that which immediately take away the goodwill. So we've always talked about the warnings of neoliberalism and capitalism in these films, and something like that. And then when you find out that Wayland Yutani eventually got bought out by Walmart of all places, and it's like,
that in and of itself as a joke kind of tells you where this film is at, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it doesn't really care about satire anymore, not of like neoliberalism or anything like that. It just does away with that almost completely.
Yeah.
Here it's a joke. It is just a gallows joke, and in that regard, it's a very 1997 film indeed.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the horror that came out of this year in particular, this year 1997,
Event Horizon.
Event Horizon, In the Mouth of Madness, right? They all have this quality about them where there is this, it's humor, but it's 1990s humor. It's the humor of saturation, it's the humor of laughing at the void, where everything's fucked, everything's done, all the systems are breaking down, all of politics is breaking down. It's that whole end of history thing. Yeah. And that's not, it's weird because it's not something this film comments upon like those other films that we mentioned. Event Horizon definitely does. Yeah. And In the Mouth of Madness definitely does. This one doesn't. It just reflects it. It just reflects it what it is. It doesn't really have like a central thesis. I think that's one of the problems with the film. It doesn't seem like all of the other films have something going on at their heart. They have some commentary that they're making about this or that. This doesn't. It's just like a collection of sequences.
Yeah. Now, if it had been attached to like sort of, I don't know, the Friday the 13th series or something like that wouldn't have been quite so out of place.
Right.
Because that's all those like, sort of franchises ever were a collection of sequences to lead up to the next death or the next event.
Exactly.
Sort of exactly. I'll tell you which was great for that. Final Destination was fantastic for that.
Final Destination, of course, which is like, it's almost like the tail end of the slasher genre, isn't it? It's the ultimate joke, isn't it? What do you do at the end of the slasher genre when everyone knows what it is in the post-Scream universe, where everyone knows the rules? You take away the killer. Yeah. You just have the situation. You just have death itself as the killer, right?
And some, I go back and watch it because some of those kills were absolutely fantastic, so imaginative.
Yeah.
You can't really translate the same sort of thing if you're doing a lore-based franchise entry.
No, that's the problem, isn't it, with this? It probably would have been a much more successful film were it not attached to the Alien franchise, if it were just a sort of thing in and of itself.
Yeah.
It's, as an Alien film, it kind of fails on a lot of levels, on a number of levels. Like you said at the beginning, it's the film that no one asked for, right? Alien 3 is kind of the end, isn't it? And very deliberately so. Sigourney Weaver, she was very adamant about that with Alien 3. This is it. This is the last one. Of course, she did come back and do Resurrection.
Yeah, there must have been a certain amount of money attached to that.
Yes, I think they probably had to really work with Sigourney to get her back for this one. I think the fact that it's not really Ripley in this one helps.
Yeah, which also sort of gives me the illusion of sort of being separate from the overall story.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? If that were the focus, that would have been great. If that were like the central focus of the film, where you've got this weird inversion of the hybridization of the alien. The alien, this is one of the odd things about the film. You've got this whole notion of like humans being cloned and sort of hybridized with alien DNA. Well, the alien's already a hybrid. That's its nature. Right? That's why it's quadrupedal and why it has sort of like humanoid elements to it, because it is a hybrid by its very nature. That's how it's born.
Yeah, depending on the host.
Exactly that. So to invert that, you could have worked with that. You could have done something kind of fun with that. But for me, it doesn't go far enough. It just treats it as like a comic booky thing.
Yeah.
Where it's just about like, she's a superhero now. She's effectively a superhero. She's got the acid blood. She's got heightened senses. She's stronger, faster. It's this sort of uber Ripley clone. Yeah. She's interesting. She's a good character. She's one of the best characters in it, actually. Yeah, she's working really hard to make this not Ellen Ripley.
Yeah, and she does her job. But it's the constant callbacks to uh, this Ripley would have done this, this Ripley would have done that, and then have to constantly say, yeah, well, I'm not.
I'm not.
You didn't
Yes,
need
I am
quite
not.
so many callbacks to the fact that she's not, because the audience
Exactly.
automatically know she's
We
not.
get it. We get it. You know,
Yeah.
we absolutely get it. There's enough context clues whereby
Yeah.
we get it. We understand. I mean, you know, one of the original ideas apparently in the script was that Newt was going to be the clone.
Yeah.
That I would have actually preferred. For my money, I would have preferred, because bringing Ripley back. I mean, I know I just said it's not Ripley, and it's very much not. Bringing Ripley back in any which way powerfully undermines all of the metaphysics set up in Alien 3. You know, that wonderful closure, that journey that Ripley goes on. And it's
Yeah.
also, there is an element of like franchise baiting about it, isn't there? There really is an element of franchise bait about it. It's the studios basically saying, well, we've got to have Ripley. We've
Well,
got to have
it's
Ripley
Fox,
because
isn't it? It's
that's
20th
what,
Century Fox who
yeah,
don't know when to fucking leave well enough alone,
exactly.
which has always been their problem.
It's always been the problem, yeah.
So yeah, that's why it kind of. I'll tell you the best way to put it. It kind of feels like a reboot remake, if you will, with the original actress in a role a bit like the role. You know how when they did Wednesday, and they had Christina Ricci in it playing a different character. It kind of feels a bit like that.
Yeah, it does have that feeling, doesn't it? It feels like I mean, again, I refer back to that joke that you mentioned earlier, the Weyland-Yutani one, where someone just flippantly says, oh, they were bought out by Walmart. And that's it. That's all you get. That's the only thing. It's real. The film is very, very intent on telling you that this is not Alien. This is not an Alien film. And it's very clear. I think that, Jean-Pierre Jeunet didn't want to do an Alien film per se. He wanted to do something of his own, because that's kind of his milieu, isn't it? He takes things and does his own thing with them. He makes very particular, very visually distinct.
Yeah, visually disturbing films as well. Now, in that sense, he was a great choice for director, because that for me follows in the same sort of footsteps and ideology as James Cameron and David Fincher. Mm-hmm. They want to make their own thing, regardless of whether or not it's attached to the IP or not. They want to make their own thing, which you have to give the directors like sort of props for actually taking that forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem with this one is it doesn't really work.
No,
because
the story has finished.
Well, that's it, because the story's finished and there's nothing left to tell, right? That's the big problem. And it doesn't really know what it wants to be. There's great ideas buried here. And there's great individual sequences and scenes buried in here. I mean, my personal favorite is the one where Ripley finds all of the other Ellen Ripley clones.
That's fantastic
sequence.
Yeah,
it's a great sequence. It's got the most disturbing imagery in the entire film. You get so much of her character in that moment. Yeah, and of course, it must have been fun for Sigourney Weaver, because she's effectively playing against herself, right?
Yeah.
That must have been a lot of fun. And it's a really good sequence, but it's embedded in the midst of all of this weird comic booky action film stuff.
Yeah.
Tonally doesn't work with like stuff that's meant to be weightier.
Yeah, some of the things I like is the sense. So if you go back to the first one, there's that industrial in terms of the ship and the setting. There's that industrial feeling attached to like sort of the commercialism and like sort of running everyday lives. And in Alien, the Sulaco was a lot more clinical, because it was a warship. It was everything was pristine. By the time you get around to Alien Resurrection, the industrial element has taken over the military side. Yeah. So the setting is very mechanical. It's very metal. Everything is just like sort of oppressive in that sense. So it sort of sees how something comes around from like being part of the commercial to like them being part of the military, because the military themselves are not necessarily the military anymore, are they? They're funded by various private contracts and sort of things like that.
It's a weird one. Politically, it's hard to know where this one sits, because you don't really know where anything is. You get little hints of things, like there's the discussions about Earth are really fun in this film. when it comes up that the ship is on like a sort of an automatic return to Earth, and everyone is like, "Oh my fucking god, no! We'd rather stay out in space with the aliens, quite frankly, than go back to Earth." And you never apparently the scuttlebutt is this is a very truncated film. There was supposed to be a last third act where they did get back to Earth, and there was a whole sequence set on Earth. But it never came about. It never came to pass. So all you get are these weird references where everyone, the minute Earth is mentioned, everyone rolls their eyes. Everyone sort of like, it's like they're shaken inside. It's like, no, we don't want to go back there. That place is basically hell.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It would have been interesting to see that. And again, you get these hints of what the wider universe, but nothing really. It's a kind of a joke. It's played off as a laugh, as a lot in this film is, and it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Very often doesn't, in fact. One of the great things about the film you mentioned earlier is the cast.
Yeah.
There's just this brilliant ensemble cast going on here from Ron Perlman, who's always interesting. Ron Perlman's great in pretty much everything because he's just so. I mean, you just got to put him in front of the fucking camera, don't you? You don't actually have to do anything with Ron.
Don't give him anything to do. Just let him. Just roll with it. Yeah.
Just let him be in front of the camera, looking tectonic and weird. And he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. The camera just adores him, doesn't it? It adores his face.
Well,
as a result,
which is interesting because it's a hell of a face, isn't it?
Right. As a result, you get a low. I mean, this Jean-Pierre, he actually really focuses on Ron Perlman's face in this film. You get a lot of like intense close-ups on Ron Perlman's face, which I totally get. And the little character beats are pretty good. Again, you do get that thing of character, which is a holdover from the original Alien, of character dynamics that are largely unspoken. You understand like who these mercenaries are, for example, and their dynamic. You get that almost immediately. You get the dynamics between all of the characters on board the military vessel almost immediately. Some of them are so overt and comic book, you can't help but get who they are. I mean, Brad Dourif as Gediman, Dr. Gediman, is like he's playing some ridiculous comic book supervillain character. He's mad. He is absolutely bonkers in this film.
He's a sort of Igor, Dr. Frankenstein mesh, isn't he? Absolutely.
I mean, it couldn't have been more comic book and cartoonish if he were doing like a Peter Lorre thing, you'd be like, yeah, that fits, actually, given the way he's playing this character, which is off the wall bonkers. It kind of fits.
There are certain things like the scene where they had to cut very, very, very quickly to something else. When Sigourney Weaver did the basketball backhand thing in one go, actually got the hoop, and Ron Perlman completely broke character and went fucking wow. If you watch it back, the ball goes through the hoop, and then he's got his hands on his hips, and he turns to her, and then the camera suddenly cuts very, very quickly. It's when I watched it the first time at the cinema, I thought to myself, that's a weird fucking cut right there. And then later on found out why. Yeah, they wanted to use that footage, they had to cut it there.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, you're not going to not use it. If she gets it in one, you are not going to not use it, are you?
Exactly. So it's, but I in terms of cast, I'm going to come out and say this because I'm not much of an advocate for her at all. I think the cast is 95% strong and ultimately let down by a wonderfully miscast Winona Ryder.
Yeah, it's hard to know what she's kind of doing here, isn't it? I mean, at this point, she had done a couple of sort of gothic horror pieces. So she was in Bram Stoker's Dracula, obviously. Yeah. She was in, very early on, she was in Beetlejuice, I suppose. Yeah. But she is not doing much here.
Apart from fucking whinging.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I like the idea of introducing like a more humanized android. That's a cool concept.
It is, but at the same time,
yeah.
it kind of undermines the android thing, whereas they look human, but there's just something just not quite right about them, which means that they don't act human.
Yeah.
And if it means that an updating program meant that you were going to get this whinging emo fuck for like, then maybe you'd be better off with the Ian Holmes and fucking Lance Hendricksons, really.
Well, definitely the Lance Henriksen one, because he was all right, wasn't he? You know,
Yeah.
it turns out Bishop was okay.
All she does is sit there and moan.
Once again, there is like a hint of something going on there, but they don't follow through with it. This is the thing that bothers me about the film a lot. It kind of like, it's throwing all these ideas out there, loads of ideas, all of which don't really work internally together, but also aren't followed through on. Funnily enough, it's a problem that we'll talk about when we come to Prometheus. It's sort of a similar problem where there are ideas, but they only work on a very superficial level. They're not followed through. So this is an android who doesn't want to be an android, right? Who hates the fact that she's an android, who wants to be human, and does everything in her power to sort of convince people that she is human, but is ultimately she has to reveal the fact that she's an android to save them all, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, if she wanted to convince people she was human, she could try, I don't know, acting.
I mean, I don't know. Had the scandals with Ryder hit at this point? You know, the whole thing.
No, they hadn't.
That was later.
And believe me, when they did, I laughed my fucking ass off. I really did. Not to revel in other people's misfortune, because as you know, I don't do that. But I thought to myself, if there was ever a more deserving talent vacuum, then I'm glad it was her. Really. It would if she'd have been like, obviously we know that Ripley's daughter never had children or anything like that.
Yeah.
But if she'd have been, I don't know, a distant relative of Hicks or Hudson or somebody who would have been attached to Ripley's past, who had a more vested interest in her. That could have been quite an interesting dynamic. The downside to it is she still would have played it exactly the same, which is this miserable, whinging, moping fuck.
Well, I think it would have been like a very distant descendant, wouldn't it? Because we're like,
it's about 200 years in the future, isn't it?
Aren't we? We're a couple of 100 years on now, aren't we? So like everything's changed again. Like the whole dynamic has changed again. I mean, you don't know really why they're doing it. I mean, the what's the doctor's name? Gerriman, is it? Or Geddeman. Yeah, his motivation for cloning the alien and for cloning Ripley and whatnot, I really like weird and slightly fetishy and obscure the way, and it's all in the way Dourif plays it. It's weird, isn't it? He's got this strange kind of affinity for the alien. Which, again, is an interesting notion,
and
but
it's explored enough.
Played out. Yeah. It's not played out enough.
Now, there was a couple of sequences which a lot of people took umbrage with. I personally thought, for a film that sort of sat outside for me, the main canon of the thing, the way it introduced certain new elements, like, for example, the trade-off for her having acid for blood and sort of like sharper senses and reflexes and that was the alien is bestowed a human gestation cycle.
Yeah, I mean, there's fun to be had there. There's a lot of fun to be had there. That could have been really interesting. Again, it doesn't really go far enough with it.
No, because it's done in the third act, and by that stage, you've only got 20 minutes left of the film.
Right. That, for my money, this is a matter of taste. This is not what the film is, and it's not what it's trying to do. So this is entirely a matter of taste on my part. For my money, I would have liked to hyper focus on those sort of deeper, darker, almost like very H.R. Giger questions about biology and whatnot. So so the alien the alien queen now has a basically a human reproductive cycle, so it doesn't need to lay the face huggers or the eggs anymore. So what manner of abominations could have been born from that? It could have been amazing. Instead, we got the weird kind of lanky, not that great hybrid.
I liked it.
Well,
the newborn, I liked it in the sense that it was clearly grotesque. All its proportions were out of proportion, basically.
Yeah.
And it was clearly this very, very strong, lumbering, dangerous creature, in much the same way that the creature is in Cloverfield. It's supposed to be a baby, this thing, so it's running around doing God knows what. And it rejects the alien queen, it kills the alien queen, but it hooks onto Ripley as his mother. And I know a lot of people took umbrage with it, but one of the things I found really striking about it was when it makes eye contact with her.
Yeah, but this is the thing. This is what I want more of. This is the kind of thing I would have wanted more of. It's just
people hated it.
Oh, I like all that stuff. I like the notion of the alien being complexified a little bit at this point. Because the sad thing is, after we discussed this in Aliens, one of the faults of Aliens, and I know that's almost heresy for people out there, but one of the faults of Aliens is the way it narrows down what the alien is. It turns them into insects, effectively. That's what they are. They're colonial insects, effectively. Whereas in Alien, you don't know what it is. You really have no idea of what thing's origins or cycle or anything is, which is what makes it so scary. And as a result, throughout the latter films, the alien becomes very simplistic. It becomes very narrowed down. There's a defined gestation cycle. There's a defined process. This layers in a new element of complexity to it. But I want more. I want more. Again, it's this whole thing of too many ideas. Do away with all the silly comic book action stuff. Get rid of all of that. Jettison all of that. And hyper-focus down on maybe those two plots. So you've got the hybrid Ripley and the hybrid alien. And those are the two prongs of the story. Because that's fun, isn't it? That's really interesting.
Yeah, I'd have watched that. Yeah, definitely.
But instead, because there's so much going on all at once and there's so many sort of like tonal variations going on, it's all cushioned and underbaked. It's like there's all the elements are not mixed together in a cake batter properly, so there's lumps of flour and bits of egg and whatnot all over the place.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work.
I think part of the problem is you have to look at the year or the time in which this came out. Alien 3 was 1991, something like that. 91 or 90.
It was a bit later than that, I think.
92, something like that.
I think so. I think it was 92, Alien 3, if I remember correctly. Let me just have a quick Google.
And this came out in 97, and in 97, you had sort of action films and sci-fi films were borrowing still most of the tropes that they had from the 80s, but they were taking things in a slightly different direction as well. And
92, so 92 Alien 3 was. So that is a long time, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is a long time. Even back then, when films were created more slowly, that was a long, long, long time.
Although, think about it, the period between films in general, Alien was 79, Aliens was 86, Alien 3, 92, Alien Resurrection, 97. So there's always been this sort of prolonged gap between films. But by the time of Alien Resurrection, you're sort of doing away with more than the nuance.
Well, I mean, that's
in terms of these things,
isn't it? Because you've had that long period, and because there are now 4 films effectively in this franchise, as well as numerous comic books and video games and whatnot. People know the alien now. People who've never seen the films know the alien. They know what the facehugger is. They know what the chest burster is. They know what the alien queen is. They know how these things work. So you are already up against it with this film. You're already up against it. You have to find a way of making this new and interesting. The alien, like the classic xenomorphs that you get in this film, are again slightly different from all the others. They're a bit more canine looking. They're a bit more sort of like they've got like an elongated snout a little bit.
And they're a little more intelligent as well.
They are, which I'm not sure I like, if I'm honest. They're a little bit too calculating in this film. Yeah. I'm not sure I like that. There's also a lot of very 1990s CG going on in this film.
Yes. You're talking about the underwater sequence as well.
Yeah, I mean, some of it's, don't get me wrong, for 1990s CG, actually, it's really impressive. It does look really, really good. And they do that wonderful thing of marrying it to practical effects, which is good. The practical effects are great. They're all universally really good. But the early CG does at times. It's kind of like, oh, I play video games that have better cut sequences than that a few years later.
Yeah. I think I like the fact, as I said, a lot of people took umbrage with it for like the newborn and for like sort of very other things. I appreciate the film because it does try to do something fresh and original with it.
It tries. It doesn't quite get there.
It doesn't quite get there, but you can see the effort. You can see certain plot points that if a little bit more tightly controlled could have been like sort of
really good.
This is like
There's again, I'm going back to this whole thing of its ideas. There are great ideas, but neither one of them are really given enough time to breathe.
No time. No.
And then there are the really incongruous moments. There are like these long, prolonged action sequences that are straight out of a comic book film.
Yeah.
Which is funny. They're actually really funny. Even a lot of the deaths are really damn funny in this film. In fact, most of them are. Most of them have like they have this really strange like humor, gallows humor to them. The captain of the vessel, the military.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, he's hilarious. Every sequence he's in is really funny. He's got like a face that's a bit like Perlman's. It's a bit too much. It's a bit too comic book.
Yeah.
And his death sequence is ridiculous.
Oh, where he like picks his brain out the back of his head.
Yeah.
It's like,
utterly ridiculous.
I think how can I put this? Not being able to settle on a particular tone. Are you a sort of a semi-parody comedy film?
Mm-hmm.
Are you a science fiction horror film? Are you like sort of what exactly are you trying to be? Because if you put too many elements in there, you're not anything.
This is it. There is no central thesis. That's the big problem of the film. It's got nowhere to go. This is the thing that saved Alien 3, right? Despite all of the problems that film had, and again, I will reiterate, it's a miracle that film exists.
Yeah.
Because of that really strong central thesis, because it really wanted to do something, you get actually a film that, despite all of its problems, is amazing. It's a really wonderful, interesting film. This goes the opposite way, because there's not really anything to tell here, because there's not really any idea that anybody really feels anything about.
Yeah.
It's just kind of all over the place. You get the impression that there are people, in a boardroom, the execs at Fox, who are sat around just going like, shall we put this in it? Let's throw this in there. Let's throw this in there. Let's do this. Let's do that. And no one thing marries together or has any kind of like real weight to it.
Yeah, it's a studio wankfest. It is.
It is. And we've spoken about the theatrical and the director's cut. The director's cut to this is bollocks. It's bollocks.
Do you know what? I don't really remember that much about it. All I remember is after they get back to Earth, there's a slightly extended sequence by about 45 seconds.
That's it. And also the opening is extended as well. The opening is of the director's cut is god awful. I can see why they cut it.
Remind me of it.
God awful. So you're in space and it's panning forward, and you're coming towards like the cockpit of the Ron Perlman ship as it's approaching the Auriga, the big military vessel, and you're like, there's a little bug on the window, and it's this bad CG, like almost cartoon alien bug that gets splattered. And you're like,
well, as in actually like an alien head bug?
No, not like the alien, just like an alien, almost like a comic book alien head. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Am I watching? This opens with a really bad, by the way, compared to the rest of the CG in the film.
Yeah.
A really, really bad CG bug monster that's splattered on the front of a windscreen. That's the opening of the director's cut, and it's bad. It's like you watch it and you're like, what the fuck is this? You know, but I'm glad that they cut that. I'm really glad that they cut that. The theatrical cut is better of this film. There's no doubt. There is absolutely no doubt.
I mean, it's. I think probably this film was a little bit up against it. I mean, it wasn't going to make such sweeping profits at the box office that would ever really warrant continuing the story. And to be quite honest, I'm pretty sure that if they did do a follow-up to it, they probably wouldn't have got Sigourney Weaver involved. Although having said that, she would have been involved in Neil Blomkamp's Alien project.
God, what a shame, eh?
Yeah.
What a shame. I mean, that's there's an alternate universe somewhere out there where that we got those films instead of Prometheus, and my God, what a universe that would have been.
We truly are in the darkest timeline.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even the darkest timeline, it's the stupidest timeline. That's what gets me. It's the stupidest timeline. I can deal with dark. I can deal with dark.
I know you can. Some of us a little more fragile than you are.
Yeah. If dark has some poetry to it, I can deal with it. But this is just the stupidest timeline. This is the timeline where we've got Trump and Nigel Farage as the bad guys, and it's like, for fuck's sake. Our mutual friend Rowan said, we deserve better enemies.
Yeah.
We deserve better enemies. That is absolutely true. We demand a better quality of enemy than this at this point, than like Suella fucking Braverman and Jake Rowling and these Graham fucking Linehan. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Basically, enemies that won't get bought out by Walmart. So,
yeah. But no, I mean, it's an interesting one. It's a really weird film. I can sit down and watch it and enjoy it. There's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. But in terms of adding anything to the wider narrative, it doesn't.
And is it a good film? Well, no, it's not. It's all over the place. It's disjointed, and it's got good elements. It's got good things in it, like a lot of bad films do. But it's not. It's just so disjointed. It doesn't have, like I said, that lack of a central thesis really hurts it. Like a lot of transitions are weird. It goes from one sequence to another, following like multiple different story arcs that don't really marry together very well. You know, a lot of the sequences where the aliens have escaped and are running amok on the base, you just don't need. You know that's happening.
Yeah, you know it's happening.
You don't need the setup. Once you've got that, I mean, this is actually another one of the great sequences. One of the sequences where you've got Brad Dourif doing his like I'm training the dog sequences, and where they kill the other alien to use its acid blood to get. I mean,
that's fantastic.
These people are fucking idiots as well, aren't they? These people who have cloned the alien are fucking morons. They know it's got acid for blood. Surely, you're telling me they didn't put them in a cell that's acid proof?
Is there such a thing as acid proof?
Well, yeah, absolutely. There are certain plastics that many acids won't eat through. So it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's silly. It's a very silly thing, but I like it. I like the fact that the aliens do that.
Yeah.
That's fun.
I mean, I really enjoyed the film when it first came out. As I've got a little older, obviously, reasoning comes into play, and I can look at things. I can look at things a little bit more objectively, and I'll still sit down and watch the film and enjoy it for what it is.
When I was a teenager, I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it because it is, again, it's this big scrappy comic book of a thing where nothing has much weight. So if you're not in the mood for something as bloody heavy as Alien 3 or Aliens, it is kind of fun.
Alien Light, if you will.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's Alien Light. It's a comic book of Alien, effectively, or a cartoon of Alien. Does it work as a film? No,
sadly not.
It's kind of all over the place, and again, nothing is really bolted down enough. Nothing is really given that time to breathe or to gestate properly. But I mean, my God, we talk about a long time before this film came out. How long was it before Alien versus Predator?
Oh, fuck! That was early 2000s. That film, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was a long time.
And that was hinted at by one throwaway sequence in Predator 2 back in 1988 or some shit.
Yeah, that's
No,
right.
actually, no.
The
Predator 2 was later than that. Predator 2 was 1990 or 91, I think.
was it? I thought it was late 1980s.
I think. Do you know what? Let me consult the Googles.
That's really interesting because I'm not sure because I mean if it is in the early 1990s, then it's doing that thing of being a product of the long 1980s, isn't it?
1990.
1990, you are kidding because it is such an 80s style film, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which in 1990 it will be.
Yeah. So, yeah, the alien skull there. And
Yes, the little nod.
that then kicked off the video game and the book series and sort of languishing and developing hell for ages. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the video games based on Alien versus there were video games before there was anything else. There were video games of Alien versus Predator before there was anything else, and they're really good. I mean, the one that came out in the very late 90s, the first person one, where you can play the same story arc from 3 different perspectives. You can either be the Predator, the Alien, or the Marine.
Yeah.
It's awesome. It's so awesome. When you play as the Predator, you feel like the Predator.
Yeah.
You just feel like the Predator. You've got its whole arsenal. You've got everything. You've got the different visual modes. You've got all of the weapons from all of the films. You've got the cloaking device. You've got the wonderful sort of targeting reticule. All of that, and it even makes the sounds of the Predator. So it's fabulous.
Wow.
As the Alien, you can walk up walls and across ceilings. You've got the acid blood, and you can actually position your screen so you can do the internal mouth attack. It's very, very, very good indeed.
For 1990s gaming, that's
yeah,
evolved.
It's really... pretty good. It's pretty good. They are. I mean, the original. It's not the first Alien versus Predator because there was one on the Jaguar, which was crap because it's on the Jaguar.
Yeah.
But this one was on the PC at around the time when the PC was becoming a really big gaming platform. Around the Half-Life era.
Yeah.
And it's a lost classic. It really is. People don't tend to reference it these days, which is a crying shame because it is a fantastic first-person game. I mean, genuinely fantastic. And there was a sequel to it too, Alien vs. Predator 2, and that's even better. That's an even better game. It's very difficult, but my God, it's fun.
It seems to me like there are some ideas that are better suited to certain mediums than others because when it translated to film, that didn't go so well.
Well, there's no reason why it shouldn't work. It could have worked with better writers and better directors and more of a, if it had
vested interest from the studio again,
exactly,
wouldn't have fucking hurt, would it?
If it were not just franchise bait, if it were not just a bunch of money maddened, people sitting around a table saying, "Oh well, it's been a while since we've done an Alien film or a Predator film. People like them. Why not just throw them together and chuck something out there, right?"
Well, yeah. As soon as someone suggests that, then it's chances are it's going to be
it's going to be shot.
An incredibly bad move, yeah.
And the first Alien versus Predator, it's not good. It's not a good film, but it's not an offensively bad film. It's coherent at least. I mean, it does what it does, and it's annoying because it does that thing of shortening everything. So the gestation period for the Alien.
Oh yeah,
it's all
literally 10 seconds.
Yeah, and you've also got we discussed this. One of the reasons why the Alien Queen in the previous films works so well is because it's a big sprawling puppet and it's got this weird kind of strange inhuman motion about it that just enhances its uncanny quality. Here it's all CG, and it moves like a T-Rex. It moves like a T-Rex does from Jurassic Park, so that robs it of something essential.
Yeah, same wire model with a different skin on it, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. It just doesn't work. It does not work. And the Predator is given short shrift here as well. The design of the Predator in that film is weird. He's kind of cute. When he's too expressive, unlike the original Predator, which is all practical effect.
Yeah.
He's too expressive in Alien versus Predator, and that makes him too human. It makes him way too human, and it robs him of something essential. Just doesn't work. Does not work.
No, it's for me. They are exceptionally well. At least the first one, exceptionally trashy fun, and that's about as far as it needs to go, and that's as far as you can take it. It doesn't add or detract anything. The second film is just no.
It's just separable, isn't it? It is one of It's one of the worst films I've ever seen, and I mean that on like a directorial level, on a technical level.
Oh,
It is bad.
it's terrible. I
It's
mean,
just
the only reason I've got it is because the completist in me won't throw it away.
don't get rid of it. Yeah, but
But
no,
it will never come out. It will never leave the DVD shelf.
there's no reason to watch it. I mean, it's just a terrible film. It's not even bad in that way where, like, bad films can be entertaining. I think Alien Resurrection is exactly this. I think it's a bad film that's entertaining. This is just insulting to you as the audience. It's insulting.
Well, yeah, but at least Alien Resurrection, as I said, tried. Even if it didn't pull off its grand hopes and dreams, it still pushed the envelope and said, "All right, let's. What happens if we try this? What happens if we try that?"
Yeah. It has ideas.
AVP2 doesn't even have that to fall back on.
It really doesn't. It's just a bad film with a bug.
Except that one sequence in the hospital with the
attacking
the pregnant women in the
hospital. Even that, I'm sort of like, I'm sort of like, oh, well, that's designed to shock, isn't it? That's designed to shock, and I'm sort of like, I'm sorry, I'm not shocked by it. I find it dull because there's no weight behind it. That idea. There's so much good stuff that could have been done with that. So much ego weirdness that could have been done with that. But no, it's just the only reason it's there is because the filmmakers are sort of like, coked up morons, basically. It was sort of just throwing shit at the wall. I'm sort of like, no, you could have done something with this.
Wasn't the age restriction on it like sort of 15 or something, or I don't know. I'd have to go back and check those, because when you start dumbing things down to appeal to a wide audience, that's another problem that films have.
Absolutely. It's a real problem. It's a real problem with the Alien franchise, because it should be adult, shouldn't it? Yeah. The material that you're dealing with here is really powerful and adult. They don't seem to understand that you're dealing with, like, certainly in the original Alien, you are dealing with rape imagery and male birth and pregnancy, all of these weird, very interesting sort of ideas and concepts that are very, very disturbing. But they just lose that. They lose that as time goes on.
Well, then again, I mean, you're talking about again the boardroom suit culture again, because they don't have any fundamental understanding about any IP that they control, and I think there's no vested interest in them apart from the dollar signs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the stories that, like, you often hear it from, like, British writers who get lucky and they end up in, like, a Hollywood boardroom because someone's making a film on one of their IPs. Clive Barker has loads of stories about this, where he had conversations with people where he sincerely thought they were taking the piss or joking, and they were deathly serious. One, I think, with the original Hellraiser, one of the stories he tells, they was in one of these meetings, and, like, somebody said, "Oh, we want to make it a rock opera."
Really?
Yeah. And he thought they were taking the piss. He thought he laughed, he thought, this is a joke. They were serious. Wow. That was a serious idea that someone put forward. And it's like, it
sounds bad, but I'd be very interested to see the results of that.
The Hellraiser rock opera. Actually, now that you mention it, that could be fun. But, like, the notion, right, that someone in a board, said
it with a straight face.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Neil Gaiman's got loads of, because before he broke Hollywood, before he actually got films and TV series made of his work, he had the string of projects where he'd written the scripts for it and they just weren't produced. They just never happened because of internal politics and whatnot. It's so long. The failed projects that almost came to completion, but which were just done away with for whatever reason. And he's got loads of stories. He talks about them a lot. He describes it as like an inverse Rumpelstiltskin story. That's what he says, basically. So, like, in Rumpelstiltskin, you do the work and the gold turns back into leaves and blows away. Well, in Hollywood, the work turns into leaves and blows away, but the money stays where it is. It's the maddest thing. It is the most insane system. And you look at it, and if you have any like insight into it, it's a miracle anything ever gets made.
No, I can imagine. Yeah.
And the notion that anything good gets made is
Even more incredible.
Even more incredible. I mean, it's rarer these days, obviously, because of the whole Marvel engine and whatnot. It's very these days. It's even harder to make a good film in the Hollywood system. It's almost, I would say, it's nigh impossible at this point.
And that probably explains how Alien Resurrection ultimately came to be and was ultimately flawed as a result.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Because it's yeah.
But you said it at the beginning. You said why it doesn't work and why it fell so flat, and that is there was no call for it. There was no desire for it at this point. There was not a film to be made.
I mean, props off for doing it anyway. But I mean, it is very, very difficult to say, all right, what happens next when every single principal character you've used, with the exception of one survivor at the end of Alien 3, is every single principal character you've used is dead.
It's dead, yeah. What are you going to do exactly?
So for the next one, I thought, whoa, what do you mean next one? We're done. That's it. Thank you very much.
So, and of course, you have to bear in mind, as brilliant as we find Alien 3, most people didn't. It fell really flat. Alien 3.
No, I know, but I can't understand why. I mean, I was transfixed by it when I was 13. There, I can't understand why. Actually, I know exactly why. It's because people were expecting more of the same from James Cameron.
It's exactly that. That's what it is. They wanted
and it went back to being a stripped down character piece.
That's it. They wanted more aliens. That's the bottom line, and they didn't get that. They got something very different. They got something that's really.
There's always this. Yeah, but there's always this thing where the sequel has to be bigger and better. Fine, I can sort of understand that in the notion for a first sequel. The second sequel needs to be better than the last sequel. Then the next sequel needs to be better than that. It's one of the reasons why the fucking Transformers franchise fell flat on its ass.
Well, that and the fact that it's always been shit.
But then strip it back down to something like Bumblebee, which was a character-driven story, and suddenly I'll sit down and watch the film and I'll enjoy it. Same thing with Alien 3. Instead of like trying to sequel bait and try to do bigger and better, because you would have had a hard time with that following James Cameron's film anyway. Strip it back to almost bare essentials. Let the story focus on the characters and how truly fucked you are in this situation. Yeah, and sadly, Alien Resurrection doesn't have any of that to fall back on.
It doesn't. It doesn't really have much to fall back on. By this point, of course, you're having this thing with saturation of franchises as well.
Yeah.
This is happening across the board in science fiction, in horror. All of the genre films are dying massively at this point. This is pre-Lord of the Rings as well. So like the whole resurrection of genre cinema that facilitated hasn't happened yet. So we are in this state of saturation in 1997 where everything is falling apart. The things that appealed to people, that really got audiences into the cinemas, just aren't doing it anymore. And we're on the very outer edge of that period of remakes. We're on the very, very, very the earliest years where that is going to start happening. The remakes of classic franchises.
Yeah.
It's an interesting point, and Resurrection just fell into. Also, it was weirdly distributed. Resurrection as well, wasn't it? It wasn't at cinemas for massively long.
I don't recall.
It wasn't there for very long because I just don't think people. There wasn't an appetite for it at that point. It had gone. The momentum had gone at that point.
Well, yeah, but if people weren't enamored with Alien 3, then they're probably not going to be invested in the idea of one that follows on from that.
They're probably not, no. And of course, I mean, as you say, the one of the big problems of this film is that it technically kind of doesn't. In terms of thesis, it really doesn't. Like the metaphysics and whatnot is just not there anymore. No. It's kind of its own little pocket thing, isn't it? It exists in its own little pocket universe, and that kind of hurts it. It's saving grace as a work, but it also hurts it in terms of its appeal.
Yeah, but it couldn't really be anything else because there's nothing to latch on to
There's nothing to latch onto. Exactly that. And it's funny, isn't it? Because like this film shares a lot of problems with what we're going to be talking about next. It shares a lot of problems with Prometheus. But
Yes.
in many respects, Prometheus is the antithesis of it.
Yes.
And we'll discuss it when we get to it. But in many, many respects, Prometheus is the antithesis of this film.
I'm going to be sitting down and watching that in the next few days just to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to know what your reaction to it is going to be. Are you going to have softened towards
Well, if you hear me screaming all the way from Tamworth,
probably
then,
not.
Yeah, probably not. No.
I mean, like, what's your position with regards to Prometheus versus Covenant?
I wonder if I shouldn't save my opinions for when we do.
Want to save the next one? Yeah.
Yeah, because there are definite thoughts on that. From what I remember, I'm going to have to rewatch Covenant as well. But there are definitely.
I won't have to rewatch Prometheus because I remember most of it. But Covenant, every single time I watch it, I forget it. Like every single time, I just like it goes. It just falls out of my mind, and that is the greatest condemnation of the film I can give. It's Prometheus, for all of its faults, it's not boring. It's not a boring film. Covenant is boring.
We will
It's
deep
really
dive.
Boring.
We will deep dive when the time comes.
We will, and that will. I mean, it's going to be a bit of a sad end, really, isn't it? I mean, we'll do Romulus, right, when that comes out, yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's not necessarily the end. There's stuff to do.
Now, is Romulus going to be a TV series or is it going to be a film? Because I keep hearing one thing or the other. I keep hearing contradictory things. I keep hearing sometimes it's a TV series. Sometimes I keep hearing it's going to be a series of films. So I don't know. Personally, I would prefer a TV series. Yeah, same here.
A streaming series to it, to a series of films. I think that's the way to take it now.
Yeah.
That's the obvious thing to do with this franchise, right? To expand it a little bit more, to delve back into its history. That's what to do with it. And I just hope they avoid the pitfalls that a lot of the material has gone into. Like, no origin for the alien, please.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be like anywhere near this. I don't want it to be anywhere near it. No origin for the alien, because it kills it stone dead when you give it an origin.
If they follow the path that those webisode mini feature things did for the 40th anniversary of Alien, the little things that popped up on YouTube, they're literally only about 10 minutes a pop. For the most part, they were all right. There was one that stood out, which was absolutely amazing, where the couple trying to escape on a little thing, and the android has put a face hugger in front of them on their escape craft and thing.
Yeah,
that hit all the right notes for like sort of creepiness and sort of unsettling. It was, and the alien standing behind and watching over it. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
I want to see a little bit more of that. I want to see a little bit more inventiveness and creativity involved.
Definitely, and just take it back to basics as well. Go and look at Giga's art. Go and look at the theses of the original films. Look at what they're doing with the material, so it's not just superficial. So there's weight to it. So you are exploring something with this. The biomechanoid element of the alien, for example, which hasn't really been a feature since the original film, technically. Let's have a little bit more of a look at that. What is that? That Giga concept of like not necessarily anatomy married to engineering, but that point where you can't even tell the difference.
Yeah. It remains to be seen what they do with it, I think. But I'm here for it. I mean, I know I should be more dubious about being invested in this, but for some reason I don't know why. And this is Prometheus syndrome all over again.
Yeah,
there's something about this that's got me quite excited.
Me too, and I don't know why. I mean, I have no reason to feel that it's going to be good, given how often we've been burned by this franchise. But this could be it, couldn't it? I mean,
it could, yeah.
It does annoy me that the material we've seen thus far has so prominently featured the alien. But then it's going to do that, isn't it?
Yeah. But how they utilize the alien, I think, will be
that's it.
Key.
I always look. I mean, again, we spoke about this when we did the original Alien, but I always look at how that first film was marketed, and I think it's genius.
Didn't tell you anything.
Yeah, doesn't tell you a damn thing. It's just sounds and images and lights and really disturbing bits and pieces. You have no idea what you're looking at or what's going on. It's just really unsettling. And that, interestingly, matches the tone of the film. So that's the way to go for me when it comes to advertising. I'm sick to death of seeing the xenomorph being like thrown into your face all the time, because that robs it of its alien quality. Of course, it's contrary to what made the alien what it is.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. We can but hope, really, can't we? So
we can. Aid Edmondson's in it.
Oh well, that's even more reason to watch it then.
Is it? That's reason to watch it. Yeah, I'm totally up to seeing Aid going at the aliens with a frying pan.
Going after him, with a frying pan.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Right? You could get a face hugger with a frying pan. I think you could do a number on a face hugger with a frying pan, and maybe even a chest burster as well.
If your aim was good, yeah.
Yeah. Of course, you would get splattered with acid, but you know.
Yeah, that's what the frying pan's for.
But yeah, resurrection. It's not much of a resurrection. Let's be honest. And it definitely didn't. If that was the intention, it really didn't, did it?
Not at all. No. I do appreciate the effort in the face of adversity.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one for me. It's fun, but I cannot call it a good film, because it just isn't. It's like on a purely technical level, like the way it's put together, it doesn't really work for me. It's a sequence of things.
Yeah.
And some of the sequences are good and some of them are bad. Some of them make sense and some of them don't. It's a weird one, and it's not one really that I go back to watch often. If I do a watch of the series, I tend to skip it.
Yeah.
Unless I'm in that very particular mood for it. Because you are right. It does have this tone of it is so strange. It's so incongruous and all over the place.
If it had gone from the outset of being like sort of what would have happened if this had happened, if it had gone off in a totally different direction from the outset and made it, and you knew categorically that this is not the same established universe, I'd have probably been a little bit more on board with it.
Likewise. Or, as we said earlier, if it were not an alien, if it like its own thing, then I probably would have been felt much more acclimatized towards it, to be honest.
Yeah.
I forgot Michael Wincott was in it as well.
As the mercenary captain.
Elgin. Yeah, Frank Elgin. I love Michael Wincott. He's a great actor, but he's never front and center, is he?
No, he's got a great voice.
Front and center. He's great. Michael Wincott is brilliant in everything that he's in. He is standout brilliant, but he's always like a villain or a hanger-on. He's never like the main character.
No, sadly not.
I always think of him as he's Guy of Gisborne, isn't he, in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves?
Is he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And he is, he is actually, unlike Kevin What's-His-Face, he is actually bothering to do an English accent as well. So it's like, but yeah, it's hard to know what else to say about this one.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much done with it. I think
we are. I think because again, you can't really go into too much with this one. It's mostly just technical details, because again, it doesn't have that thesis. You can't delve deeper into it because it's not there.
Well, no, and it doesn't have enough there to establish a running narrative for anything. Well, because obviously no sequel ever got made to it, so there's nothing there to say. Oh, and then the next part of the story is this. It's a standalone in a wider universe, which is technically not possible. But
yeah, it's a very strange piece of work. It's very odd conceptually, and in terms of execution, all over the place.
Yeah,
it's all over the place. It's a curiosity. If you haven't seen it before, definitely watch it.
Oh yeah.
If you haven't seen it before, definitely watch it. But if it's not really any better than you remember it. Sadly, if you haven't seen it, it is what it is. It is what it is. But we've done it, Jer.
We have.
We've got to where we were going. I mean, the whole reason we started this series is because for people to understand what we're going to say about Prometheus.
Yes.
You need to know what our background
there had to be some context to the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to understand where we're coming from with this. Yeah. And we've gone from the late 1970s right up to the 2000s now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the next one.
Hold on to your bollocks, ladies and gentlemen. The next one's going to be a corker.
Because the next one's going to be probably the longest of the videos, let's be honest.
Yes.
It's probably going to be the longest one. And probably the shoutiest one as well.
I will do my best to be reserved.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jer, before we go, is there anything you'd like to pimp out?
Oh Jesus! Yeah, I've got loads of stuff going on. I've got the 10th anniversary of my band's album launch coming up in August. So I am releasing all the tracks on a week-by-week basis, starting in June, onto my channel.
Wolfkang1. That's down below, guys.
And after that, I'm releasing all the demo songs that we never got finished. So they're rough ready, but they're mostly complete. So I'm going to be doing a playlist of those. I'm going to try and continue with a little bit more Strange Corner if possible.
Yeah,
did you catch the most recent one with?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
All I wanted was to use the logo. That guy made it fucking unbearable. If anyone hasn't caught that episode, go onto my channel and check it out. I've got more 7 Days to Die coming. I've got my 100th Transformers review on my new playlist coming up in a couple of weeks.
Oh.
Which will be G1 Scorponok.
Oh, my favourite.
Yeah, and just like random shit as and when it occurs to me. So do check out Wolfkang1 on YouTube, Wolfkang1 on Twitter, Wolfkang1 on Blue Sky, and I think that's about it.
Excellent. Links to all of that down below, by the way, guys. As for myself, as per usual, you can find me here on Exaggerated Elegy. There are lots of video game Let's Plays and things happening at the moment. We've gone back to doing Hannibal Digested, so we're picking that up very soon. First episode of this new run has been recorded. It should be up on Saturday, I believe. Saturday morning, probably about 9 o'clock, 9:30. If you go up to Arrow Films and look at the new Hellraiser UHD and Blu-ray set, The Quartet of Torment, my colleague Kit Power and I are on the Hellbound DVD. We're on the featurette Hell is What They Wanted. It's an hour and 40-minute discussion of the Hellraiser franchise, Hellbound specifically, and of Clive Barker's work. We're very, very proud of that. In terms of published work, you go over to strangeplaygrounds.com and you'll find links to all of my short story collections. If you go on to the Evil Empire of Amazon and type in George Daniel Lee, you'll find my author page on there that has links to the short story collections and any of the anthologies and things that I've been published in. If you go over to gingernutsofhorror.com, you will find the My Life in Horror series of articles, which is it's a series of articles I inherited from Kit, actually. They are deep dives into horror media that has meant something to us at some point in our lives, and they're very, very deep and dark, and there's lots of sort of self-dissection going on in there, if you like. They're a bit much, they're really, really deep, these articles, but if that's your thing, hi hence. You can find me over on Twitter at the moment, probably not for much longer, because it's a cesspool and a trash fire since
it is.
Certain people took it over. You can find me on Blue Sky at Exaggerated Elegy, and I think that's it for me too. Jer, again, brilliant, really, really good fun.
Thank you so much.
No, pleasure, and thank you for listening, guys. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cool.